Okay, hi, I'm
Right.
Michael Mikowski. I'm the president CEO of GINSA, and thank you very much for joining us with us today. And I'll introduce him in 1 second. Is Maurizio Molinari, and we're going to discuss the political rise of, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Giorgia Meloni, and who's widely expected to be the next Prime Minister of Italy. And normally it's the first time we've done something on Italy at GINSA, but I think that obviously NATO is an important part of NATO, and it's an important part of the West. And it's a country, frankly, that I don't know very much about, and I don't think many Americans probably do either. But yet her election has gotten a great deal of attention here. I would say I can't remember the last time an Italian election has drawn such attention in the United States. And so we're going to be discussing that. But let me first introduce Maurizio, someone that I was fortunate enough to meet only recently over the summer, and it was a terrific experience for me. He's editor-in-chief of the Italian daily newspaper La Repubblica. And by the way, Maurizio, please correct any of my Italian because it's pretty much non-existent in my terrible pronunciation, probably. Before that, you were also editor-in-chief of La Stampa. And before that, I think you were a journalist and posted in Brussels, New York, Israel, other places. You covered a lot of issues on the world stage. You've interviewed a lot of world leaders. You've published 24 books on foreign policy. And thank you very much for joining us. And I think the first question I'd like to ask you before we get into the political rise of Meloni is just tell the reader, our audience, just something about your newspaper. I believe it's the second largest newspaper in Italy. Is that right? And
yes, Michael. Thanks a lot for this opportunity, occasion, and thank you for having me. I really believe in the need that Europe and America know better each other. This is crucial and important for security and prosperity of both of us. So that's the main reason why I really enjoy doing this webinar with you. La Repubblica is the second largest paper in this country, and I'm also in charge for the whole publishing group, whose name is JEDI. The owner of the group is Mr. John Elkann, who is also the owner of FCA, the automobile company, and today is called Stellantis. And you may know Ferrari, Juventus, some of the brands that he owns. And being the largest publishing group in this country, we are involved a lot in digital transformation. This is most of the time, this is what I do. I enjoy, of course, in looking and publishing great stories and scoops, but most of my time is about digital transformation. And this is really a huge revolution, and I enjoy doing it. And it's really a refreshing experience for an old-time journalist being involved in this new era.
okay, well, thank you, Maurizio. Look, now Giorgia Meloni heads this party, Brothers of Italy, which I think the phrase comes from the Italian national anthem. It got 4%, I believe, in the last election, but is really catapulted to, I think, is it 26% of the vote in the current one, and it's expected that with two other right-wing parties will form the next government. And I think the two other ones, like Berlusconi's party and hers, and a third party, the Northern League, that it's like 44% of the election. So, but please correct me on that. But she's been portrayed here in the United States. The word fascism comes up a lot, certainly on the left here. I think a New York Times article was cited the word fascist. I don't remember how many times. I don't really know much about her and her party, and I don't think most Americans do. And the term fascism is getting used in my opinion, far too loosely in the United States. So why don't you please discuss who she is and something about her party, and then we'll get into some specific issues.
I will do that. Just allowing me to start with one very short remarks, just to explain why I will speak in this occasion about so many contradictions. The political season that we are experiencing in Europe since 2016, and especially in Italy since 2018, is the season of populism. Populism is completely reshaping the political arena. So the old terms of conservative and progressive, small and right, they actually are not more able to describe the feeling of the people, the aims of the leaders, the programs of the parties. So that's why, speaking with our own language, we are facing and we are describing a huge amount of contradiction in traditional political terms. So if you will be patient enough to let me describe this populism stage, as I summarize Italy became, you will understand how is it possible that the post-fascist young lady, so pro-American, pro-Western, pro-Israeli, is actually allied and voted in the European Parliament in some occasion along with the US interests, and in some others with the Russians' interests. And is trying to build a coalition that has been seen and watched by the Atlantic allies as an opportunity, but also by the Russian competitors as the biggest opportunities they have to rule a European country. This is the scenario that we have. Why? Because every single piece of the tassel, of the mosaic, is the result of two different phenomena. The bigger phenomenon is the populism. What is populism? Is the middle class that in our countries, I'd say from the Brexit on, started to revolt for inequalities, discomfort. They vote against. They vote against the power, no matter what, no matter who is in power. They are they feel themselves in a situation unpleasant. They have no hope, and whoever is in power, they vote against. This is the general scenario, summarizing very generally, but I can go in details for every single country how this is reshaping politics. And Russia is trying to exploit this political instability to enforce its own interests in every single country. Russia cannot win against Europe, like against NATO, but can promote chaos, confusion in our country. And this is what they are trying to do. Okay, this is the scenario, because without starting from this scenario, it's very difficult to understand the strength of Fratelli d'Italia. Now, when Fratelli d'Italia was created, it is more or less more than 10 years ago, was more than a post-fascist party. It was created by small groups of very far-right activists against Europe, against the US, against democratic values, that they were a spillover from the right that, along with the previous leader of that party, whose name was Gianfranco Fini, decided to join the democratic institutions. Basically, they refused the choice made by Fini to enjoy the democratic institutions. And they said, we belong to our past, we look back, and we don't look forward. So we don't go along with Fini, never mind that Italy goes in a different direction. we will stay in the far right position. The consequence of this extreme position in parliament and in the country was that they were all the time in the opposition. We had in the last 10 years several governments. As you know, in Italy, you have many governments. The average is one every 2 years. But in every occasion, they were always in the opposition. What happened? That in the last 2 years, during pandemics, basically, and the economic crisis that follow pandemics, they also were in the oppositions. When ruling the government was Mr. Draghi. Mr. Draghi is the opposite of populism. He's a technocrat, he's a great guy, pro-West, pro-Europe, pro-Israel, pro-free economy, pro-market, you name it, okay? He's the perfect prime minister. In Italy, we never experienced a prime minister like Draghi. They, Fratelli d'Italia, were the only party in the opposition. So you had all the other parties in the parliament that decided to support Draghi, and they, the only one, a small far right party that said, we will stay in the opposition. What happened? That Draghi, he did his best. He ruled the country really great, but he was unable not only to defeat, but to tackle inequalities. So the reality was that when we went back to the polls in September 25th, you had the same discomfort that we saw in 2018 when the populists won the election, because the two majority parties at the time were the Five Star Movement and the Northern League, both of them protest parties. The same area of protest that we had in 2018 was not only there, but grew. It was bigger. But since they were the only one in the opposition, they voted mostly for them. So it was a populistic dynamic that allowed her to take together more or less the same number of votes and representatives that 5 years before was taken by the other two protest parties. And here comes the surprise, because when she wins.
And by the way, that's the Northern League and that's the Five Star Movement,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Right. Okay.
Because when she wins, the decision that she takes is to start building the new government, having as a best advisor Mario Draghi. So the person against whom she won the election and she got to the power. Why? Because the problems are so big, the war in Ukraine, the energy emergency, the recession that is coming, that she understands that only with her original party, she's not able even to start the discussion how to do. So what she does, she decides not to give any public statement. The first one, it was done yesterday morning. So for 6 days, she was completely in silence. But why in silence? Because she went to Draghi. She sat down with Draghi, and basically she asked Draghi, help me. What do I have to do? What has to be the agenda? No, I'm not exaggerating. This is the dynamic. And the other paradox is that Draghi, that is really a civil servant in this country, he loves deeply this country, and that he understands that she's expressing a terrible, a huge wave of populism. He understood the need to help her, because this is the only way to try to build a new government for this country, because otherwise she doesn't have the political resources to do it. Now, this dialogue with Draghi put her in and here I'm finishing the first answer, is putting her in a situation where her approach, her statements are all very moderate, very centrist. She took from Draghi the strong pro-Atlantic position. She took from Draghi the strong pro-Israeli position. She is not taking yet from Draghi the strong pro-European integration position. So in this regard, it's still a question mark. But mostly, and here is the key, she is supporting the Draghi's idea that the leader of Northern League, Mr. Salvini, cannot be in the government, and especially cannot be in the government as defense minister, foreign minister, interior minister, simply because he is considered too close to Russia. Mr. Salvini was the one that was against the sanctions, was opposing sending weapons to Ukraine, and he's the leader of the Northern League. So theoretically, he is one of the best ally of Meloni. And here I'm finishing, but is describing exactly the situation. So you have Meloni that is working to build a new government with Draghi, trying to push aside Salvini, with whom she led the campaign to win the election.
It
Is that clear enough?
yeah, yes, that actually was. I wasn't aware. How do you um first of all, obviously, as you point out, Draghi is the consummate, civil servant and bureaucrat, technocrat, and well regarded internationally. So you could understand why he would want to help. But how do you think that reflects on her to reach out to him? Because a lot of politicians, when they get to where she is, would want to, they wouldn't reach out to the person they defeated like this and say, I need your help. But it actually, do you think that reflects very positively of her that she did this?
I think that she understands the Italian system works in a way that once that you win the election, you have to form the government. To form the government, you have to get the mandate to form the government from the head of state, more or less like in Israel. The head of state, Mr. Mattarella, will give her the mandate to form the government if she will convince him that she is able to run the country. And it means, first, to have enough votes in parliament, but secondly, to be able to do it, to have program ideas able to do it. Mattarella was the same head of state that 5 years ago, when Five Star and Northern League won the election, fought against them for 3 months to push them to have a program and people inside the government able to run the country. She remembers what happens. So to avoid the same problems with the head of state and to get the mandate as soon as possible, is trying to have the right advice from Draghi. This is what she is trying to do. The problem for her is Salvini, and the problem of Salvini is bigger than what we can believe, because Salvini, he is really close to Russia. Just to give you an idea, 2 members of his party were sent in Donbass last week to be observers in the referendum or in the pro-Russian referendum. So we are speaking about a political party that really went too far in approach in being close to Russia. She won the election also with them. So now I believe that she's trying, also thanks to Draghi, to convince Salvini to step down. She may keep the Lega inside, but he has to step down because he, as a political personality, he's really radioactive. Now, if he will step down, let's say the pro-Western faction in this country will get a huge result. Otherwise, will be completely the opposite. So the fight that is going on, it's really a hard fight, and this is why I go so far to say that I believe that Italy is actually one of the hottest battleground in this moment in Europe between the pro-West and the pro-Russian forces.
Do you wasn't it that long ago, a few years ago, where people thought Salvini would be the next prime minister? And isn't that right? I mean, I remember reading that, not in your newspaper, but maybe it was the Financial Times or one of these other European papers that, but it's.
Yes, Salvini was the most popular leader in Italy, let's say, in the summer of 2019, before pandemics. Then when pandemics began, he made a lot of mistakes because being populist and being against the state, he started speaking against the vaccine. So being elected in the north, that is the most industrialized area of this country, all the business people, they were in favor of the vaccine because they wanted to work. They wanted the factory to reopen. And he was against the vaccine. So this was the basic mistake that he did. It was the populistic moment where he lost a lot of appeal. And she was really good in playing the card of the far right to tell to his electorate, I'm more sovereignist than him, so you will have to vote for me and not for him. And she was successful in that.
And one of the things, the other party that I thought that, and she's looking to ally with is Berlusconi's party. And I thought he also historically was close to, or very friendly with Putin. What about his party on Russia and Ukraine?
2 days before the election, he decided to give an interview, the main channel of our TV. He's 80 years old, 86 years old, very ailing man. He has difficulties in standing, he speaks slowly. And he started with a long statement on Ukraine. And the statement more or less was about how rightful was Putin in deciding to invade Ukraine, because his only aim was to put a bunch of good people in Kiev instead of those that were ruling the country. And he ended up this public statement saying that he, Berlusconi, didn't understand why the Russian soldiers were not fighting bravely against the Ukrainians. This was in TV, live. Now, I can say you, I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, we're journalists, so we write about these stories. That she, when she watched, she almost fainted because she knew that Salvini was so close to Putin, but that also Berlusconi was going so far in taking this position. And also why, I mean, does he really believes that Russia is so popular in this country? Russians are not popular in Italy. You've been in Italy, many American, I mean, we had 2 million American tourists in this country, with all the respect, but Russians and Germans are not popular. I mean, we love Americans, French, and British. I mean, this is how Italy is made and was built. So why Berlusconi, 2 days before the election, was actually reading a statement that looked like very much by a statement made by Putin himself?
Wow. And how important is Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russia war? How important is that in this election? I mean, how does that compare to other issues you referred to about the energy crisis, the coming recession, and things like that?
This is a great question, because in fact, on what people voted, they voted on economy, on inequalities, on this big fear of energy crisis. These were the topics that were at the base of the decision. The war, it wasn't there. So, and these adds other questions. Why Salvini and Berlusconi, they consider the pro-Russian sentiment so important if it's actually not paying? But the questions are very serious, because of course we wonder if there are things that we don't know. There are reasons that people don't understand, that they have the reason that have to do with their personal link, probably in the past or in the present, we don't know, with the Russian government. What is important for us today is that Meloni fully understands she's against them. She said not only to Draghi, but to her advisor, that she doesn't agree at all with both Salvini and Berlusconi on Russia. She understood that the real problem is Salvini because he's a young, energetic leader, while Berlusconi practically is fainting away. And his number two is the former president of the European Parliament, Mr. Tajani, very pro-Western, pro-European, and pro-US person. But this is a political problem for her, and it's telling us how deep are the impact of populist movement in political life, and how complicated will be to rule Italy if these forces will join the government. Of course, Fratelli d'Italia will rule the coalition. But if these two parties will be inside, of course, it will be a daily fight, and it may be complicated.
And you referred, for instance, about the EU issue, which seems to, the opposition to the EU seems to generate a lot of this popular movement that we've seen in recent years in Europe. And, but yet, as you point out, she's working with Draghi. How does this, how does that?
This is also a great question, another contradiction. In Europe, her party is a member of the conservative group. The conservative group at the European Parliament is the group to which is associated from outside also the Likud, just to give you an idea. Okay. Now, in this group, the two strongest parties are Fratelli d'Italia and the Polish party that is leading Poland. Okay, the Hungarian of Orban are not inside of this group. This group, the conservative group, was created in 2009 by the British Tories. The British Tories, they felt alone in the European Parliament, so they said, let's gather together all the parties that more or less are similar to us, so that we will have our allies. Then we had Brexit, they left, but the group stayed. So now basically is Fratelli d'Italia and the Polish party that are leading this group. What do they believe? They believe that Atlantic Alliance is more important than European Union, first. And the European Union has not to be a sovereign identity, but has to be a loose network in which every single country can get what it needs the most. Okay, so a loose federation, not a federalist idea of Europe. That is the idea of Europe that Draghi has. Now, here comes the problem for Meloni, because to be such a strong ally of the Polish, it means to be a strong ally of probably the most pro-US country in Europe in this moment. So how can she be in Europe together with the Polish party at the government and in Italy with Salvini? And to make even more complicated, when the European Parliament had to vote on Orban, the leader of the Hungarian government, whose positions on Russia are really too close to Moscow, she voted to defend Orban along with Salvini on topics that have to do with the rule of law and the application of the rule of law in Europe. It means the judicial system, the freedom of information. So there is a gray line, a gray area here. And if this is not enough, let me add even more that what they have in common, Salvini and Meloni, is that they both support Bibi Netanyahu. in the final speech that they gave of their campaign, both of them, they openly said, she said that Likud is part of her coalition, European coalition. And he said, I hope that Bibi will win in the election, Salvini. He openly said, I hope that Bibi will win the election. So, and here comes the topic of the Jewish votes. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to turn to Israel. Then we'll go back to fascism in the EU also. But yeah, please do, because let me ask you if you address her, because didn't she say, she referred to Israel as a crucial ally, at least that's how it was translated in English, I don't know. And then, or maybe she said it in English. She also made a comment, without additional assurances for Israel, we believe it will be difficult to revive the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. I I personally share that. I would like to hear more American politicians say the same thing. Uh, but yet in 2014, when Israel had one of its, conflicts with Gaza, and I think that was the 50-day one, um, she decried, quote, another massacre of children in Gaza. Now, she didn't mention Israel per se, but the implication, I think, was Israel. Yeah, how do you see her on Israel? And has she been consistent or
She has been
changed?
no, absolutely. She has been consistent in supporting politically the state of Israel, as I have to say, Salvini as well.
Hmm.
Salvini even more than her in terms, for instance, to move the embassy to Jerusalem.
Hmm.
Salvini more and more, every time that he discusses about Middle East, he says, if I will be prime minister, one of my first decisions will be to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So the scenario that we have here is that the populist party on the right in Italy have a very pro-Israeli position. And if we look at what is going on in Europe, we see that the Conservative Party have a very strong pro-Israeli stand in Hungary, in Romania, in the Czech Republic, in Poland. The president, the prime minister of the Czech Republic belongs to a party that is in the same European group of Miss Salvini. But pay attention, because this strong pro-Israeli standpoint taken by the conservative parties in the European Parliament had an effect on the Popular Party, the party of the CDU in Germany, and also on the Socialist Party. Because if you pay on the Socialist European Party, because if you see what's going on inside the SPD in Germany, or inside the Democratic Party in Italy that belong to the Socialist Party, they are changing their narrative on Israel. They are not so strong pro-Israel as the conservative, but nevertheless, they are not more anti-Israel as the left were used to be in the 80s or in the 90s. So the paradox of the situation is that thanks to the wave of populism, the number of political interlocutor that Israel as a state can have in Europe grew on both sides of the aisle. And this, if we think about what may be the interests of the state of Israel, of course, the opportunities that the state of Israel, politically speaking, has today in Europe are many more than 10 years ago. Different parties, different routes that are fighting among themselves, but in reality, on this topic, let's think, for instance, for one moment, of what's happening in Germany with the Grünen, with the Greens. The Greens have taken some standpoint on the state of Israel. No precedent in German history. They usually were a very anti-Israel party. What happened to them? Why are they changing their mind? What's going on? Is that the political atmosphere is such that when you have on the right such strong position pro-Israel, and on the left, the anti-Israeli position as such a minority, like what happened in the Labour Party with Corbyn, you see the political atmosphere in Europe is changing. And I believe this is a great challenge for the new leadership of the state of Israel, because there is really the opportunity to build a new equilibrium of interest in Europe that may have some good opportunities for the state of Israel.
What are you talking about, Salvini and Meloni? What attracts them to Israel, you think? Is it, aside from those who don't like Israel, might not be, might be opponents of them, but what about the state?
Security, anti-Muslim, security topic, how to defend from terrorism, anti-Muslim, a different level, And pay attention, in the case of Salvini, Russia. Because the fact that Israel didn't take a very strong standpoint against Russia, for them proves that this is the right position to have. This is also very interesting. I try to explain this more and more to the Israeli diplomat. This position that they took in diplomatic terms is giving to them an incredible platform because they can be credible for both. Are you following me?
Yes. Do you also, they also see Israel as a country that's willing to defend itself, pursue its own interests, also a country that hasn't historically been well treated by the EU, which they don't like either? Does that play into that also? Or
Yes, I agree with you. Historically, the EU has been too strong linked to the old-fashioned position on the two-state solution. That basically was just the request to Israel to withdraw to the 67 borders without elaborating it, without opening to new scenarios. This was, and this still is, the main weakness of the EU position towards the Middle East. And I believe that this also explains why so often European countries in UN bodies, they vote against Israel. But also in this frame that it stays, as we described, there are some elements of new trends. For instance, the need that the European countries have of Israel science and medicine. For most of the European citizens, pandemics, they came out from pandemics with the conviction that, right or wrong, but this is what they believe, that Israel was one of the best states in defeating pandemics. And they also believe that the science, research, water research, energy research, if a country today needs to develop high technology, has to look in the Mediterranean region to the state of Israel. So if once Israel in the European street was basically one topic, the Palestinians are the underdogs oppressed by the Israeli soldiers. Today, if you ask to any European in the street, if I say Israel, what do you think? They will tell you science and medicine. And this is also a new scenario.
And what about, like, I have the quote here. She made a very, here's Meloni said Israel represents the only full-fledged democracy in the broader Middle East, and we defend without any reservations its right to exist and live in security. Does that, Israel is a democratic state, does that resonate also on the right, on the popular?
Absolutely, yes, because from the right point of view, they see the Arab state as states ruled by dictatorships with no rights, very far away from Western values. So they always looked at Israel as a kind of democratic Western state besieged by enemies. And this feeling to be besieged by enemies, it resonates a lot with the identity of the rights. They look always at themselves as isolated, no, and surrounded by enemies. And this, I'm telling you, there are all kinds of opportunities that are growing in front of our eyes. All of us will have, of course, to be prudent because political process may be very fast and people can change their mind. But the number of opportunities that Israel has today in Italy, and not only in Italy, it's for me, it's really unprecedented.
And how about the Abraham Accords? She says here, we firmly supported the Abraham Accords as a means of maintaining regional stability and curbing Iran's aggressive foreign policy. Therefore, we believe they should be further implemented. I must say, it took the Biden administration a few months to be outspoken. They didn't, some senior officials didn't even mention the Abraham Accords for a few months. Took them, I'd say this was a pretty firm thing. And how does the Abraham Accords, which is certainly one of the most dramatically positive things I think that happened in the Middle East for a long time, does that affect how Israel is looked at? For instance, if you're a country that also wants Gulf Arab investments and things like that, how does it, well, anyway, does that impact?
I believe, Michael, I believe that on the Abrams Accord, she's really copying the wording of Draghi. Draghi has been a great support of the Abrams Accord. The idea of Draghi is that the Abrams Accord are giving to Italy the opportunity to build opportunities, especially along Israel and the Emirates, on new technology. This is what he thinks. He said it more and more, and she fully agrees with him on that. I believe that the front where Draghi was working the most to make Italy one character, one element, one European tassel in the mosaic of the Abrams Accord was energy.
Yeah,
for this opportunity that Italy may buy the Israeli gas through Egypt, thanks also to this technological and investment support of the Emirates and of Jordan. So this idea that we may see a great energy agreement between Arabs and Israelis on gas that will allow Italy and so Europe to get more and more liquid gas, LNG. This is something that Draghi wanted very much. That's why he went to Israel recently. This is the agreement that he really wanted. And I allow me to say that I'm almost sure that he explained this scenario to Meloni. And I believe that Meloni will follow exactly this path.
I was going to ask you about the energy. When we met in the summer, I remember you talking about Draghi's interest on really on the focus on natural gas from Israel. Let me go back, if I may, to some I brought up at the beginning. It's about the fascism label, or that at least those on the left here have called her, I don't know what term, but fascism always comes in. She's fascist or she's quasi-fascist. Of course, President Biden has used that term a lot also, or semi-fascist or something, whatever that means. How do you see her? And we were just speaking right before we got on, and you said it's 100 years since Mussolini came to power, right? And how do you look at her? How do you look at her party on her view of democracy? She certainly respects Israel's democracy. Is she a fascist or not?
I mean, she never denied her roots. We have to ask ourselves why so many Jews, especially in Rome, voted for her. And we have, because she never denied, the Jews know this fascist group that are supporting him very well, because they have been fighting with them down the street. So the question is why they voted for the same candidates. And this is something that has to do also with what's happening in Hungary, in Poland, and in France. Because pay attention, also in France, an incredible high number of Jews, they voted for Le Pen. So what's going on? What is going on is that the need for protection and security the Jews in the diaspora have, and the need for them to vote for candidates that are pro-Israelis, put them in a situation that they may have to vote also for extreme right parties. Is a contradiction? Yes. We may dislike this contradiction? Yes. But this is also a window on the life in the European diaspora today. And we have to fully understand this trend. because it shows also how difficult it is for the Jews to live in these countries. It's not easy for a Jewish family in Rome that know that she is a candidate, she is voted for fascist, that you vote for her because she is a pro-Israeli. It's complicated. It's not easy. But at the end of the story, they do it. Why they do it? Because they feel more protected by her than by others. And I'm telling you, we live in time of contradictions, and the need in a political season like this, I believe for all of us, is to study. We have to know better how people think, what they believe, what they speak about in their houses, and so to understand how they behave.
Are you referring to, when you say Jews feel that they're better protected, is it because of the fear of the North African and Syrian and other Muslims that have been coming into the country? And we see this in France. I certainly, where Jews have been attacked, killed by often, well, not often, but too often, unfortunately, by Muslims who are either they or their family has come from North Africa or from Syria. Is that what you're referring to? The concern over Muslims, immigrants into their countries?
I'd say the violence that some of these migrants bring, not all of them,
Of course.
especially the second generation.
Right.
For instance, in a city like Milan, one of the problems that Jewish families are facing more and more is that their kids, especially the young kids that they have, are attacked by baby gangs of second generation migrants, especially from Morocco, from Tunisia, from Egypt. Not the first generation, their sons, that they behave like gangsters and they look for Jews. So there is a question of basically of security. So who is granting you more security and protection? So that's why I'm telling you, the decision that they take in the polls is also a mirror of the incertitude that is ruling the diaspora life in Europe nowadays.
And it also, that contribute to these right-wing populist parties also embracing Jews and Jewish causes more like Israel. Does that contribute to that? They both share this fear, at least of a number of Muslim, Muslims in their countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. I give you an example. I know personally people that they told me, Maurizio, why do you care so much about Salvini pro-Russian stance? If he will win, he will move the embassy to Jerusalem. This is what I care about. How you answer that? From his point of view, his priorities are such that he, at the end of the story, he voted for Salvini.
And these politicians don't now, have you seen anti-Semitic statements by them, or they don't, they often are saying.
I said that in this campaign, the anti-Jewish sentiment or anti-Israeli sentiment was very, very, very low. It was there in small groups and statements in the extreme right and in extreme left, but every time that came up, the leader of the respective side, they pull it down. So this is also interesting because in the public dialogue, to be anti-Jewish, it seems that for the time being, it doesn't work. For the time being, I'm saying, but for some reasons, it's not working.
You referred to
if you ask me what for instance, what I fear the most, for instance, is that some Novaks group that they actually didn't belong to any special group of alignment of forces, but they made public events with huge images of Adolf Hitler, saying that Draghi and Adolf Hitler were the same person because they were against the vaccine. So if you want the vaccine, like Hitler that was destroying democracy, this maybe is the most dangerous part of the public opinion because they are really extreme. They are both extreme right and extreme left. And in this way, they are re-legitimizing the image of Adolf Hitler, not Mussolini, Adolf Hitler in the middle of the square.
But I'm sorry, one last thing, because I know we're running out of time, although this has been, for me at least, a fascinating conversation, is is you referred to her still as a post-fascist. And what did you mean by that?
The fact that she said that fascism belongs to the past, that she's not recognizing herself in this ideology, but that in the symbol of her party, she still has and keeps the flame that is the symbol of the grave of Mussolini. Mussolini is tombed in a small village in northern Italy. On top of his tomb, since the beginning in 45, there is this eternal flame. And so all the parties that identified themselves with the heritage of Mussolini had since 1948 this flame in the symbol, and she still has this flame. Jewish organization, democratic observers and opinionists more and more asked her to take that flame off, to be reasonable with her ideas, and she didn't do it yet. But we cannot exclude that once she will get in the government, she will understand that to rule a country like Italy, in one of the biggest parts of the European Union and the Atlantic Alliance, maybe that flame has to be turned down.
I see. One last thing is, given what she's doing, what you talked about early on about her talks with Draghi and trying to sideline at least Salvini, as the person, not necessarily his party, do you think she's going to be able to cobble together a coalition and become the next prime minister? And if she does, how stable do you think such a government might be?
I believe that what she's trying to do is to convince Northern League to get rid of Salvini. So to keep the Northern League inside the coalition, but without the radioactive leader that they have. If she will succeed in this political operation, it will be a big win, because the coalition will stay united, strong, and they will have enough votes in the House and in the Senate to rule the government. Let's say at least for 2 years, that in Italian terms means to be a very stable government. If Salvini will not give up, and if for some reason Northern League will stay with Salvini, will defend the position of Salvini, so she will be in the position to have to renounce to Northern League. And so it means to open up to negotiation with other parties, and so to create a different coalition. We cannot exclude that she will have to go there, but she's trying the first way because it's, of course, the easiest. I believe that in 2 weeks' time, we will know about that.
If he is sidelined, Salvini, then does he become effectively the head of the opposition in a way of how does that affect his own, or does he get marginalized over time, you think?
You know, he's fighting very hard, not only to lead Lega, but also to be admitted as Minister of Interior. Minister of Interior in Italy means to be in charge for the Secret Service. So this is the public fight that he is doing. He's saying that he's the best person in Italy to rule the Minister of Interior. So this is the situation where we are, and it's a difficult scenario for her, because she's trying to explain to Draghi and to Mattarella, the head of state, that she will run a moderate government, and she has the radioactive leader that wants to lead, the interior minister. So it's a real hot potato for her. But answering to your question, if he will stay away, I believe the meaning will be that he will be completely defeated, and he will have to leave politics.
Oh,
For him, it's live or die game.
I guess what should be definitely my final question is, how do you think the U.S. Should react, or if she does become prime minister, she puts together, as you point out, there could be different possible coalitions here and different partners. But what do you think is there, how the U.S. should react of her becoming prime minister?
As far as I understand, the U.S. in Italy in this moment basically is defending the red line of the anti-Russian standpoint.
Yeah, I see.
They don't care about any other topic or position or idea. The interest of the US, and I believe that both Draghi and Meloni, they are fully aware of that, is that there will be no pro-Russian leader inside the coalition, for the simple reason that the war is still waging on, that we fear the atomic nightmare, that Ukraine, it's less than 2 hours flight from Rome. So it's really a red line that the US administration is defending very hard. And allow me just to say also something more. All the statement that they came out from Washington about documents that the US administration has on European politicians too close to Moscow, I believe also is a clear message to say it's better for them to stay away from government. Otherwise, somehow these documents will be revealed and the situation will be clear for all. But it's a delicate moment. It's not easy. Let's put it this way.
Well, Maurizio, thank you so much for enlightening me, for enlightening our audience here. I think we all learned a great more than we certainly reading in the newspapers here. And it was really, thank you so much for your time and explaining all that to us.
Michael, I hope it was really helpful for you all. I told you what I care the most is to keep Europe and US together. Yeah. Because this is the lesson that I got from my parents and grandparents.
Correctly. All right. Well, thank you very much. I wish you a good evening over there in Italy, in Milan.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you. Okay. Bye bye.